This is the Tech Valley Game Space podcast series, Game Club. Tonight we'll be discussing City Skylines by Colossus and Paradox Entertainment. For those of you who haven't played it, it is a city builder in the spirit of SimCity. And that's the introduction.
What did you think about? Who are you first?
My name's Chris. I've been coming to Tech Valley for over a year now. This is my second time attending Game Club. The first was last time's with Life is Strange. Since that was a story-heavy episode, I figure I'd go with a story light or story absent one. You're just building a city. There's no plot. There's no characters unless you mentally assign them to the people who are in the city.
I guess I could go. I'm John. I play. Well, all right. So, I guess like the last actual City Sim game I've played was probably like SimCity 2000, like when I was a child. Like I like these type of games, but like I never have the time to like devote to doing any of this stuff. So it was kind of cool to finally play one of these games. City Skylines has been on my list for a while of games to try out. That new Planet Coaster was pretty cool as well. But this one was fun. It was a lot less, I guess, like overwhelming. Which I've seen a lot of city sims where like I start them up and it feels really overwhelming to like try and do anything. This one was pretty clear cut about what you had to do, which I appreciated. So I got into it pretty well, and you know it was fun.
What mods or what DLCs did you have in your version of City Skylines?
I actually forgot. I had the disasters one because the base game doesn't come with disasters. Which I thought improved the game a little bit, but I don't know.
Did you guys actually get to the disaster points?
Yeah.
We had a couple.
Yeah. You could also create your own disasters. Earthquakes, Godzilla.
Huge version of Batman.
Can we keep, sorry, let's keep going around before we like get into the whole roundtable discussion.
I'm Robert. I have played a few Sims in my lifetime. I started with SimCity on the Super Nintendo way back in the day. I played Sims 3 recently for the previous discussion. And I picked this one up, and I don't know, I kind of liked it. I didn't play as much as I hoped I could. A lot of other things going on this month. I did have kind of a complete opposite experience from John. I felt like it didn't tell me what I was doing, but for what I played, I enjoyed it.
Hi, this is Taro Mia. I have stared at someone playing SimCity all the way back in the day for I don't remember how long, I believe at most 10 minutes. And that was the most experience I had with City Sims. Also, I watched a Let's Play of it. That's pretty much it. So, exciting stuff. I did buy the deluxe version of City Skylines. Did manage to make a pretty extensive city. And then decided to download Alana's map of the New York Capital District and try to make my own New York. And that's where I stopped. But anyways, in regards to my thoughts of the game, I thought it was actually pretty fun. There were some scary implications in the game systems that made me reconsider what political message it was trying to imply. So there was some very deep things I was thinking about after playing the game, and I wanted to kind of discuss about. So that was disturbing.
Aaron, I'm not a huge fan of the sim games. I played a few of them. For City Skyline, it was alright in my opinion. Nothing I really didn't like and nothing I really didn't hate.
My name is Alana, and I also have been playing city simulations since the original SimCity. I was an early purchaser of the latest SimCity, which had multiplayer built in. And I bought this game pretty early in its life cycle. That's why I went through the weird process of getting your own topography to make your own map and messing around with that a bit. So most of my experience comes from the early stages of the game, and I don't know if I've bought any DLC yet, but I think I'll check out some of the DLC eventually. But most of the DLC isn't really necessary to the gameplay. Yeah, most of my experience with the game came in the period after SimCity came out and the hoopla around that, or the uproar, and then when City Skylines came out and the response to that as something that came out after SimCity. That's it for me.
I'm Anthony. I liked SimCity and SimAnt for the Super Nintendo. I played this game and I liked it. I did not get any DLC or mods. I played it plain. That's it.
So you didn't even get the deluxe version?
No. I downloaded Alana's map. That's it.
Well, first take it along. What was the first couple of topics you had in mind?
Just what routes did you take? Like, did you focus a lot on road building? Did you put a lot of, once you opened up your various facilities, did you put a lot of fire stuff out? Or did you focus on police and try to keep the crime rate low? Like, what was your general strategy if you had one?
It didn't take much to keep the crime low. I mean, just try to meet the demands of the city, really.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure parts are covered for fire protection and all that.
Actually, if you don't mind me asking, Robert, specifically, what was your original couple of strategies? Because you said you had a lot of difficulties playing the game.
Okay, well, I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I started the game up and it gave me little hints here and there, but as I started building things, it didn't really tell me what I needed to know. Like, I would put down houses and then they would be blinking because they didn't have water or electricity, and the game never explained how to give them water or electricity. And I pretty much had to look online to find some sort of tutorial. Eventually I found some guy who explained how to actually play the game, and then I began my process of starting it. And my first attempt, I wanted to try to change the land to my hometown. I was, like most people I assume, I wanted to try to create my hometown. And
Nope.
That would not be the case.
I did not want to make my own hometown.
not necessarily in this room, I'm talking in general, but it did not work. My hometown really sucks as far as layouts of roads and buildings, and it was not very friendly for adaptation into a game. So I just said screw it, and I decided to just make a town on my own. And my strategy essentially was to zone everything off into what type of element it was. I had one specific area that was industrial, that on one side of the map, on the complete opposite side was the residential, and the commercial was in the center. And so none of my people ever claimed about or complained about pollution. There was always commercial to be able to access, police, fire trucks, everything. I mean, everybody loved living in my town. I never had to raise taxes. I reached maybe $1 million without taking out any loans except for the very first one, only because I needed to build more wind plants. But yeah, I mean, that was pretty much my strategy, was just to lay out, everything away that would conflict with each other, away from each other.
Yeah, like one thing, like early on in the game, like once you figure out like how everything works, you can pick up like everything pretty well. But like at the beginning, like electricity is such a weird system that they put together, because like in most sim games, like they have like the power line components. So then you think, okay, so every building that needs power needs like a power line connected to it, and just having like it be an area around like any sort of structure, is kind of weak. Like seeing power lines not being like that necessary of a thing, like, or like even that critical. Like if you just put things close enough together, like you could just chain things, which was interesting. And then, but water was like, as I expected. It's like you need to put piping, where it goes. Which, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. One thing, like when I like when you start a bunch of cities, like which is what I was doing when I was starting out, is like just kept making city after city, like, not spending like, 2 hours at most on one. But like, there is a certain point where like you could make a pretty balanced town and it will just be self-sustaining. And that was kind of something that like I kind of went back to a few like other city sims, and some of them give you like incentives to, I mean, like this game does have incentives for you to like keep continuing. Like they'll give you like, certain new buildings you can unlock, but everything is, very proportional to like what the current size of your city is. Like, you usually don't have anything that like requires more than like what your population is, or what I mean, like, the sizes of your firehouses, for instance, like, you don't need to actually have like the biggest firehouse. As soon as you introduce it, like you'll be fine with like what you have usually up to a certain point. And in like, SimCity, for instance, like, they actually do have incentives saying like, like people need a lot more power, like there will be certain events that happen at the city size where it's like what you have is not sustainable. Like they will try to like throw like wrenches into it, basically saying you have to expand out, or you have to, do something else. Like SimCity has this interesting mechanic where you can, SimCity 2000 specifically, I guess, 3000? I don't know. Was there a 3000?
I think so.
I think there was actually.
That might be the one I was actually playing. But they have this mechanic where you have like a neighboring city, which is just like some NPC that like calls you on the phone or whatever. It says, our town needs like more water, so like if you build a water pipe to like the very border of your map, we'll like buy water from you. And that's like an interesting thing, because then like, okay, so I could build water out and then have to build the infrastructure for more water, so then there's like all the costs and everything for that. So then, and then you might still have an excess of water at a certain point. I mean, I think, it could stand to have like a lot more events happen. And that's a really big reason why, like, I didn't even get that far into the game when I was like reading on the wiki and everything about like the events they had. Like the disasters, for instance, is like a really, I feel like, integral part of, well, I don't know if it's like integral or necessary part of SimCity, but like I like them because like they're pretty goofy. And more importantly, they'll shake things up. Like, I mean, as literal as throwing a wrench into the middle of your city as you can get. But like when a disaster happens, like you have to repair stuff. Then it's like, okay, so now I have to like, refix the like topography or whatever. Like you need to fix things, and then you need to like probably change things, because there's some things that are going to be like too much for you to just like, you can't put everything exactly back the way it was. So that's like a big reason why I bought the DLCs, because like, it throws more wrenches into it.
Yeah, I remember the disasters in SimCity, and I felt like in this game I didn't have a lot of challenges. Like, obviously I would have, people complaining that they don't have enough energy, and okay, so I'll just build another wind thing. But there's never any quests, never anything to really overcome, except for just building more people into your city.
There's a point in the game where it literally starts turning into a cookie clicker territory, where you literally just have to keep the game on and just come back to it every once in a while, do some configurations, go back to doing whatever and all that sort of stuff. and you just get more and more money over time. So
Yes.
it's like, yeah,
It's kind of like playing around with model trains or something like that.
I
Yeah.
think what would have
I
made
think
it
it's
more
I think it's a
interesting.
pretty zen game.
Well,
Basically, what I was saying, the only thing that I think made it more interesting for me is if it had like different type of themes that you could put in it with the world.
technically they didn't make it a very moddable game, so it is
They did.
technically possible to give all sorts of different themes should you choose to do it.
Yeah.
It's just a pain to set it up. So
Like
Yeah.
if we could have it instead of be like near the highway, it could have it be like a country type of one.
Maybe they can come out with future DLCs, or someone can come up with a mod where you're basically building the same mechanics wise, but with a different aesthetics. Say build ancient Rome with dirt roads and chariots and stuff like that.
yeah, I've seen a lot of like reskin mods.
I
It-
just think something like that would be interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it's weird that all of the map, all the worlds that you create are all the same land mark.
Yeah.
Because I saw the one John was making, and then the one that Taro was making, and it's the same layout.
They do need to eventually diversify their ecology, like
Yeah.
add in snow landscapes,
Mhm.
or maybe islands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Their DLCs are very interesting because like they're very haphazard. Like there's there's the Disasters DLC, which everyone, like all the reviews I was reading about, it's like everyone was saying this is like should be in the base game, not like a $15 DLC.
Yeah.
$50?
15.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, Anthony. Anthony's got a face on and he was like panic. But
Because the basic game was 30.
yeah. No guy, I wouldn't have paid 50. It's like-
No.
I was gonna try and get it for my laptop, but my laptop's barely on its last limbs.
But yeah, I was like saying like the other DLCs they had were there's nighttime DLC, which was basically like your city has more activity at night. It was very
I thought it was a mod that makes it so there's no sun.
Well, before that point, it was always daytime, I think. So when they released that DLC, they also added features to the base game to make it go into
Yeah.
night. So every time they release a DLC, the main game does get upgrades, but a lot of those features weren't in the base game to start with. They just come with the patches that go with the new DLC.
Did this game start out in early access, or is this they just put it out there?
I don't think it was early access, but definitely felt like when it first came out, it was missing features that some of the classic Sim City type games had. So a lot of those, I mean, I don't know if you can do Disasters without buying the DLC, but some of the DLCs will add, like the Snowfall one or whatever, will add the ability to have winter without having to buy the DLC, I think. So I mean, I kind of view the DLCs as mostly unnecessary to purchase because they kept updating the game, but the game definitely.
And there wasn't a lot of weather or anything like that either.
There's thunderstorm disaster basically. That's
But like there's no rain.
oh, there was
stuff like that.
rain.
there
I
was
think.
rain, yeah.
When I saw you guys playing it, I didn't see any of the rain.
It doesn't do like anything really. I think that's like another thing. It's like when it rained, like sometimes. Well, in other sim games, I've seen like weather actually like affects something. Like if you don't get enough wind or sun, like if you have a bunch of like solar panels, that actually significantly affects you.
Yeah.
There might be mods that, if there's heavy rain, there might be floods, I think,
Yeah.
if it's not in the DLC.
One of the, I mean, I do like that there's mods. I think having the mods available from the start, that's one of the things that attracted me to the game. Because there's features I didn't like. For instance, they tried to limit, in the base game, they try to limit the amount of land parcels you can buy based on trying to make the game more accessible and not run poorly on other hardware. But since I had a pretty good PC, I wanted to make my city's as big as I want to be able to buy like as many plots of land as I choose. So I downloaded a mod that allows you to purchase all the land parts, and I downloaded one that lets you get rid of the tweeter pretty quick. I downloaded one that auto bulldozes abandoned buildings, so I don't have to go through bulldozing them manually. And like the whole, I think one of the things that made me buy it early on was like people said they downloaded my map, just being able to go to a topography site, download the topography, and then load it into the game and be able to mess around with it. One thing I did discover when doing the topography stuff was that when I loaded the actual elevation map of this area, even with the modifications, the rivers are not very deep. Like we have a couple of rivers in this area, and they might be like 10 or 20 feet deep, whatever. It's probably deep enough to have shipping go up and down the Hudson River, but in the game, the way they programmed it, it seems like they want to have really deep water. So originally I had just, the basic streams were flowing down. It was nice to see that when I added water like to the higher elevations, it would flow down where the actual river was, because the topography dictated that basically water flows towards the river. So it's nice to see that the water, I really like the water physics in the game.
Sarah just walked in. You're not actually.
Hi guys.
Hi, Sarah.
We're doing our podcast.
So I liked the water physics and everything, but even after I I manually made the rivers deeper so I could add more water, and I was hoping I could get shipping to go up and down the Hudson or something, but apparently you need like excessively deep water to have any water type of transportation going on, and that was probably a little disappointing when I realized. I thought, I appreciated the water physics and everything, but I was kind of like, real rivers are usually not that deep. It was a little bit gamified a bit that they made water.
Gamified.
They made the water have to be so deep in order to function as a waterway. So.
I mean, it didn't seem like there was a whole lot you could do with the topography. Like I was trying to do like stuff just on my own. I mean, the water is like a very, I kind of agree. Like the water is a very disappointing system because it's more like gelatinous than, when it's like a little bit of water, it's like kind of more jello-ish than, like actual body of water would behave. I mean, in my experience anyway, but yeah, like it's, I mean, one thing, with this game, like, the way I usually play Sims, and like, my brother did this a lot too, is like, we try to break the system like within its own rules. Like, when we played like Roller Coaster Tycoon, we do a thing where like we'd make, lemonade like 10 cents and then charge like $30 for the bathroom, try and like break stuff like that. And I didn't see like, a whole lot of that like in this game that you had the capacity to do. Like you could.
It's kind of messed up.
Yeah. we had like, we had like a lot of fun with like just messing around with, like making our own custom roller coasters and stuff, and we're doing, Roller Coaster Tycoon. And this game, like, it doesn't feel like it gives you quite enough freedom to do anything besides like actually build a city, which, I mean, it kind of is a very weird statement to say that, like, to be complained that you aren't able to like do anything besides build a city when that's the point. But like,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of Sims do kind of factor enough in a little bit that like, you could break the system and come up with something like kind of unique. Like one thing I was trying to do was like make a like layers of city, like raise the roads enough, and then just build like a second layer on top of like another layer for the city, which doesn't really work because like for zoning, there's no way you can like raise the zoning at all without actually raising the topography. So I mean, I don't know, like, it's a, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of a weird complaint I had, but like, I feel like it is kind of like a signifier of like how, I don't know, it does definitely feel like there's a lot of work that still is left to be done. Like, I don't know if they're still actively working on it.
Yeah, they just released an update not too long ago. Like, their latest DLC was the mass transit stuff. So even if you haven't bought that DLC, a lot of the upgrades to the transportation got kind of updated for free. So like, you may not have gotten all the buildings that were released with that, but they upgraded the way you place roads, and I don't know, I think with games like this, game was kind of a sequel to a game that was based on transportation. So to me, this game, a lot of the focus is on building and upgrading roads and how you deal with traffic and stuff. And that's kind of the heritage of their Cities in Motion games that they made previously. But I do like building highways and like road systems. So
Yeah.
But I mean, like the upgrades to the traffic, where you can like change traffic lights and stop signs and all that. Because originally it was, a lot of these games, it's a struggle to make the streets work the way you want them to get a good road system going based on the AI and everything. So this one, I think, does a pretty decent job of simulating traffic and allowing you to build roads that work and stuff. Whereas it was a little bit difficult early on in this game, and also in games like the latest SimCity, where traffic is a big problem in the game to overcome.
I think a good theme they could create would be Marvel or DC.
They could get a license, sure. Or maybe just their own superheroes. And then you would also have to have supervillains.
Yeah. I think that'd be kind of cool.
I found that like the optimal strategy, going back to what was your strategy point, was just kind of lay out the roads in a grid, and then try to use a maximum amount, and like lay it out in such a way that no space is wasted.
Yeah.
And after a while, traffic starts becoming a problem. But then you throw an intersection and go like, "Hey, you there! I don't care about you anymore. Let's just place a road right at your house," and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So you just kind of go on and make this random grid system, and you're like, all right, well, that looks like a city to me, and you plan it out like, you plan it out like a city and call that a day. I mean, that sounds logical and quite optimal for what I was trying to do. That makes sense, but it's like there are places where I feel like the systems were created to optimize on very specific things.
Mhm.
That once you you start being punished for being even remotely creative, and that's kind of like the parts where it started disturbing me a little.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think, that's kind of like what my point was, it doesn't feel like you can be that like original creative. Like you can make like a layout like however you want, but like, you can't do like when you place a road, like it's only a road.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen, I'm trying to think of like different examples in other like sim games. Like I don't know. I mean, like it's like kind of the type of road you do. Like there's actual like I guess like like it is. I do agree. I guess I do agree. Like everything's like kind of very like one singular use, and like there's not a lot of room to like actually branch out from anything to do like something really silly. Like like one thing I was trying to do was make like we had that in our Twitch stream of it. Like we had that interstate in the middle of that huge roundabout or whatever, like in the middle of the water, and I was trying to build like a second one on top of that would be like interconnected, and it was not like liking that at all.
No.
Height, it seems to have like a very big issue with like height, which I mean makes sense.
Yeah.
I've seen people make really intricate roundabouts on YouTube, but there are ways to get, like they made it like a target, like just roads around roads
Oh.
around roads around roads, and it's
Yeah.
like some of them would be like 6 stories high or whatever, and they'd connect them all, and it would, you know, it was nothing anybody'd ever built in real life.
Yeah.
Concentric rings.
Yeah.
To the game's credit, there are some cheats that you can enable right from the get-go, such as money not being a concern and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So if you want to be creative, it gives you the
Yeah.
opportunity to do so, just like Minecraft.
Which,
Uh,
yeah.
When you play the original vanilla version of the game, or at least the way it's intended to play out, quote unquote, things start to break down very quickly.
Um,
Yeah, right?
Basically, I was gonna say when you guys talking about doing the roundabout thing, like if they had like a giant like hotel building, like the tower one,
Yeah.
you could just make multiple circles around it that connect to the highway, with a big old
The-
tower, hotel tower in the middle.
The-
There'd be your city.
They do tend to simplify things because actual cities are allowed to do more than just charge tax on land. They can sell licenses. They can give out free services and various other things. While all you can do is like you build a police station. They just police. They can't do additional services.
Yeah.
Like in Roller Coaster Tycoon, you can put up an information kiosk that is allowed to give out or sell umbrellas. So I understand where you guys are going. It is, I think, either purposely or maybe they're intentionally simplifying it, that they plan to expand in either future DLCs or maybe a sequel.
This is something that got me kind of curious. You can actually set based on district, at least in the deluxe version, what sort of resources to gather, whether it be forest, whether it be art, agriculture, that kind of stuff. I've never seen anything come out of that. Like I try setting a location and set it to oil, for example, and sure, it'll take up all the oil until that location doesn't have oil anymore, and then like I'll have to switch out the industry to something else, might be generic or something, and so on and so forth. Like that is interesting as a form of, resources can be depleted such that an industry can't be met anymore. But then what is the advantages of actually selling that industry to something else? Like I haven't noticed any particular advantage to it. Does it give me more money? Because that kind of would make sense, but then that'll make me very picky about what I want to choose.
Industry makes goods for commercial use, so they'll ship goods to your stores to sell and stuff. And I think like generic industry uses resources to make things. Like if you have forestry, for example, they'll use the wood to make chairs or whatever.
So what is the advantage of me switching from a generic industry to a wood industry? If generic one already takes
You don't have
care-
to import the goods. You make your own. You make your own raw materials. I mean, otherwise, if you don't have it, I think it imports it from another city or whatever.
It's why you see those big trucks come into the industrial areas,
Yeah.
dropping off supplies. They're bringing in supplies from outside of your city.
I guess then the second question, so in theory then that makes it so that, the commercial stuff.
And it
becomes cheaper.
gives people jobs
Why do people need jobs?
to pay the
Yeah.
taxes to live in your
Yeah.
city.
What I'm hearing here then is it gives you more types of resources and presumably gives you a more independent city then, correct?
Yeah. In theory. I don't know if it's true.
It depends on
Because,
how
like,
you look
That's
looking
what
at
people
independence.
People have been saying that.
That seems like a very like aesthetic, aesthetic like design, and just like there's not like an indication of that.
Mm.
Like I've seen some Sims where like you actually need wood and metal and stuff to like actually build things, which I think that a system in that case would make a lot of sense because like you need wood, so you don't need to wait for it to import.
Yeah.
But like everything kind of just boils down to, is this going to give me more money or less money?
Yeah.
Or more people, or like it's basically people and money is like
People,
your two
happiness
resources.
index.
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. But they can't represent real life in its entirety in a game. Otherwise, it would be too complex.
Well,
They
I
have to
mean,
simplify
neither
it
did the
somehow.
previous sim games either.
Yeah.
It's just that previous sim games were designed with the assumption of, designed with like throwing monkey wrenches into your planet in mind, therefore making it more interesting and more playable in the long run.
I mean, there's there's definitely a lot of Sims where like the resource management is like an actual critical component of it, and like it works pretty well. I think in this game, like there's they're very focused on like the bureaucratic side of like management, which is, I guess, I don't know, like to me, I guess like that's not like a very fun system to be playing in, where all you're doing is just like managing money and systems. And,
Like I said, I think it's a pretty zen game.
yeah.
To be fair, I kind of disagree with the it's a Zen game part, because there is a point where I found that expanding a city too large actually became a detriment.
Okay.
I could
And like I was the kind of person who's like, all right, so I'm going to be a true politician and devote all my money into education. And now all the commercial locations are complaining at me because nobody wants to be hired in industrial locations, and industrial locations cannot get any work done. So like now I have this completely failing city where everyone's too educated to work on menial things, and therefore none of the commercial locations has any supplies to sell things. And I started rapidly losing money.
So the game became interesting.
No, the game. So, like, sure, I tried solving
Okay, so
that by
you-
crushing all the elementary schools, and then now they started complaining that they're not educated. Now the industrial locations, the guy that was complaining that nobody would work for them, were now complaining nobody was educated anymore. And I'm like,
Yeah.
figure yourself out, man.
kind of cut off like
Welcome to government.
I did crush the colleges too. They didn't like that. I'm at a point where I've managed to get all the education levels to yellows, as exactly as Chris said, and all the like commercial locations are still complaining that they're not getting any supplies. And I'm like, I've built more industrial location for you.
Yeah,
What more can
Are
you
there
want me to do?
roads from the
Be a
industry
better
leading?
mayor.
Do the trucks have access to the zones?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have more roads than you can ever imagine because I put everything into a grid.
Right. Well, how bad is the traffic?
There are a few places where it's bad, but the locations that shouldn't be, the locations that are complaining are not the locations where the traffics are bad.
Well, how many
Your
ways?
workers are just mad picky and mad annoying.
How many ways
You should
into
fire
your
them.
city from the highway do you have?
Like 20.
Okay.
Disparate that.
Rather than troubleshoot the city.
So like the implication I got from this game is that you should not put too much money into education, which is not a good lesson to come out of from a game like that. That's why I say that's why I began
Yeah.
with there's a lot of
Yeah.
I don't think
It
the
made me,
developers intended it this way, but there's a lot of political messages I see here that feels very unintentional, system-based things where I'm like, do not devote money into colleges, do not devote any money into high schools, do not devote any money into elementary schools. They're a waste of time for you.
Right.
And they're going to make it so that you can't make any more, you can't make any of these like commercial locations happy. And I'm like, that's not a message I want to hear from a game.
It made me wonder if actual city planners did things like that.
On purpose.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess to be fair, like most cities don't have like multiple colleges. Like,
Well, there's also like
We have a city here that has multiple colleges, by
Yeah,
the way,
four.
for anyone listening.
And we do promote education.
Yes.
But I mean, like it's those kind of small things where the game seems to expect a very specific way of playing that I feel can be taken in very wrong ways depending on who you are.
Well, I mean, I look at it like there's always, you can try to make everything in your city super optimal, or you can not worry about it. Like, if businesses say,
Booming.
well, let's say they want low education workers because the higher education workers won't work there, then maybe we'll just have less of those businesses around. I mean,
Yeah.
I just kind of,
I did do that.
I don't necessarily respond to every complaint that every little business or person has.
To be clear, along
Like an actual
the
government.
only way I can make that work is by first destroying all the industrial and then destroy all commercial, so nobody can buy anything.
Well,
You can do it incrementally and do it like when a building kept getting abandoned over and over again, I just de-zoned that area and bulldozed it and didn't let it develop again.
For instance, you might always have people complaining if you build their houses right next to the superhighway or
Yeah.
a train station. So I mean, there are some things you just can't really get around unless you cheat or something.
It's not cheating to
Yeah.
relocate them and build residential zones away from places that'll make people happy.
That's pretty much what I did. I didn't even build any train stations or anything. I just had residential side of my square.
Well, I built a lot of airplanes, and
You don't
I only
have
built
to.
fixed
You don't have to build your city jam packed to take up every single space in your.
But that was not the
On the
reason for the
land.
failing of my city.
Well, I don't know about that.
The only real complaint I had, and this is probably silly, but I think it was landfills or something.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a bad system.
I had to, I think I downloaded a mod to like auto empty landfills or something, because I would have landfills to collect the garbage, and then normally I think they fill up and they just stop working until you manually say to empty them into
The
like an
river.
incinerator or something. I don't know. So,
No, not the river. They
so I
won't
would
do
just
Really?
I would just
They
set
do
up.
that?
They won't.
Do they put it in the river?
I'm saying they don't.
Okay.
If you,
It was
once
just
it's
a-
in a landfill, you have two options: go to another landfill or
Right.
go to an incinerator.
Right.
So I thought that was a little. I mean, I
Should
personally
be able to
like.
put it in the water.
I like the Zen aspect
No.
of just building the city and watching it go. So the fact that I had to
It's a quick way to
Do
get
this-
rid of
like-
civilians.
this
Yeah,
micromanagement
a lot of
of
talk.
this, just having to constantly. I downloaded a mod basically, so I wouldn't have to constantly check on the landfills to see if they're full and people are complaining about garbage, which is, to me was the same thing as constantly sweeping the city to see if there's abandoned buildings you have to bulldoze. So I'm glad they made mods so I wouldn't have to do that, but I just thought it was something that the game should be able to do for itself, and I shouldn't have to tell it to do that.
It might make sense if there was more of an upgrade. It was like a purchasable upgrade, so that it does that automatically for you. I definitely like the idea of it letting you know that there are abandoned buildings and they lower your land value, and here's how to do it, so that at least you get the value of what those power ups would feel like. I don't know. That would probably be the way I would design it if I were to add those kind of mods as part of the game.
Yeah.
There are a few things where I felt like they should have built it into the game rather than making you rely on an external mod. Like the first completely aggravating thing about this game was that the date is backwards. It goes day, month, year, and my
Wow.
brain does not compute with that.
That's how they do it over the pond.
Yeah, I can't handle it though. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I can handle year, month, day. That's fine. But day is not as significant as month. You don't put day first. And it did not work in my brain. So I had to go looking for a mod to do this because there was no way to change it in game. The mod wasn't working. It crashed the game. And even then, if I wanted to use a mod, it was disabling achievements. And it's like all these really cool things that you can do with mods, and it disables your achievements.
Is it like is it really important to know what day it is though in the game?
But just seeing it go up like that, it was driving me insane.
Oh.
My first annoyance was
I
definitely
never
the
noticed.
tweeter. That little bird I had to kill. That was my first annoyance.
I love
I
that
hate
bird.
Twitter in general, but
It told me that I had the best city of all time, like 3 times over.
I don't need to be told that. I know my city's the best.
Even as all the commercial locations were complaining at me. I guess
Yeah.
that's exactly why I needed it, because so many people were complaining at me. I needed some justification.
Well, I was curious for people who played my terrain. What did you think of it? Because I didn't put like an excessive amount of work into it, but for those who
It's
tried
cool.
the Capital District, did it work? Was
I
there any problem?
recognized the Mohawk and the Hudson.
I thought it was like, oh, hey, that's where I live.
Yeah, there's no like city pre-built there or anything. It's just a highway and a rail line.
Also, you just did the train. You didn't make the actual city.
Yeah, I thought it'd be better for people to build their own city, on that location. I didn't put like a super amount of effort into the highways. Like they're kind of like, they don't follow the exact curves that the real ones do. They're kind of a little janky. Like for instance, our actual intersections, it turns out, are a little more complicated than what I could do with the game, I guess, in the editor mode. I tried to make one intersection like where 87 meets 90 look kind of realistic, and the rest of them I just kind of slapped together because I don't know, it seemed like it was too difficult or too much work to get the actual intersections. Because really, like, we have a pretty complex, some of the stuff in Albany is pretty complex with their bridges and everything. I just don't want to spend that much time on it. Most of it I thought was going to be off. A lot of those stuff was like off the map, like places you couldn't even get to anyway, so they were like on the borders, so I didn't really feel like spending a lot of time on it. But did you notice any problems using like a custom map, or is it pretty much the same? Because
No,
I
I didn't
mentioned
see
the
any
water.
problems.
The water.
The water was a significant problem in the sense that, like, the only place it would let me start was somewhere smack dab in the middle. So, like, there was this tiny river where I can place the water thing and then the sewage. And I'm like, really? That's all I can deal with when it comes to sewage? And it became like a constant problem. Electricity was also a constant problem as well because there wasn't that much wind.
I noticed that you can like basically drain the entire river, which is probably realistic, but and inversely you can get floods if you block the river. So
The hydro plant does that, doesn't it?
it sucks up the water. Or you mean the dam?
It backs up. If it backs up the water, it can flood into the properties.
Oh.
So one of the things about using realistic terrain is there's not. I mean, we get flooding here, but it's not too bad. But there's not a lot of elevation change between where people live and the river. So when that gets into the game, it's really easy to flood potentially, or
Back to the date. I think stadiums have event dates, unless that was like unless that was a mod or something.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought maybe no, it didn't.
yeah, I think stadiums have events. And so,
Yeah, it must attract like more tourism and stuff. And maybe there's more traffic in that area.
I never
On
put
that
down any
day.
stadiums.
Yeah,
Was that a
didn't.
special building that you got?
I don't know. I'd never put one down myself, but I thought I saw it in a video I watched. So it could have been a mod or
Yeah.
something.
well, I think Yeah, there's definitely stadiums in the game. I think it's a free download.
Yeah, yeah,
One
I
thing,
had one.
one thing kind of like reminded me about was like, they didn't really put like that much of an emphasis on like building parks or stuff. I mean, I honestly don't know if there's like a sub menu where it measures the happiness about parks or.
You can see how it affects the people, like so if you see it, you'll see the happiness of the people, and like if it's red, I think it's pretty low. If it's good, it's blue.
Yeah.
So if you build like a couple of parks in the same area and everybody and like the homes are blue, they'll upgrade. So if people are happy, they'll upgrade their homes and stuff.
I wanted to not to divert too much, but I wanted to talk a bit about the whole SimCity versus City Skylines thing, because I played both early on, and to me, they feel very comparable games. Like, they don't feel that different to me. I think SimCity is actually a harder game to play. It's more of challenges, like massive fires and things that will happen, dealing with sewage and all that. So I do enjoy playing the new SimCity game. I think the reaction from gamers, though, is completely different. I mean, the big difference is City Skylines is an offline game, and SimCity was built as a multiplayer game. So, and plus the modding thing, the fact that, with the problems SimCity had at launch with its servers, and the fact that City Skylines, even if it was a less complete game, was cheaper and didn't have the issues because it wasn't online, it just had a much more favorable response from the gaming community. So I think that goes to show you that even if the core game of building the city was pretty similar, I didn't really prefer one over the other that much. The fact that the extra stuff, like allowing mods and listening to the gamers in terms of if they wanted large cities and stuff, and it ended up making the cities game much more popular, and SimCity just kind of died off pretty quickly because of the negative feedback.
Rest in peace, Maxis, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the game itself was still, I think, just as good.
SimCities, Maxis.
Okay.
Yeah, the core game was, just as beautiful, just as good of a city simulation. So, I don't know. I would say play SimCity as well if you could, but it is like its own separate universe. It's in Origin and all that. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, I haven't played any of the. I don't know like what the, I guess, franchise directions it went in, because like the only copy I have, like I've only ever played like SimCity. I guess it's like either 2,000 or 3,000.
That's when it was still 2D.
Yeah, to a degree, I think so. So, but like I do agree that like those games are harder to, like, there is a lot more to do, and I think there's some versions of it that I've played where it felt like there's like too much to do, and I mean I think this one really feels like there's not enough to do, but at the same time, like, it's kind of trying to say like that's the point of it. I guess.
Yeah, I would compare it to Cities XL, which is another city sim game where you just sort of play stuff down and it grows, and you don't have a lot of effort required. It just kind of, the city grows and you keep expanding and earning money, and you don't have to worry about the issues that pop up aren't like super severe. Like I remember the big problem in SimCity 2013, I think it was, whatever year it came out, the new SimCity was, fires were really devastating. Like you could get a fire that would wipe out big parts of your city and stuff like that. So and crime and stuff was a lot more severe. Like I never remember worrying about fires or crime in City Skylines. So I think it doesn't really challenge you in that way of making sure you have enough coverage for those things. So it's a more laid back experience.
I think it's like a lot of like, you know, in SimCity, you know, there's like fire and crime events like just happen. And I feel like in City Skylines, like I don't know if we just never played long enough to actually see it, but I feel like if you just have enough, you know, fire police stations, like things just don't happen because it's to prevent it. Yeah. So I think there's like that aspect of it is like, you know, just having the building there prevents like the need to actually like, you know, think about like, you know, because like with the landfill stuff, like you actually have to worry about like how the roads are, you know, organized and, you know, make sure that the trucks can get the proper coverage they need. But the fire station, like, you know, it could be a very efficient, you know, roadway, but like as long as it's near the area, like it's already preventing, you know, stuff from happening.
I have found that in both the stream and in my own playthrough as well, the placement of the landfill does affect the health of everybody else, as well as the same story for industrial and that kind of stuff. So like I think that system is really interesting, but you know, as you mentioned, when you start getting into like say what happens if you put the police station in the middle of an industrial location or that kind of stuff, like they seem to have almost no negative implication whatsoever, both to themselves and to the other locations. So it's like, well, okay then, why would I not want to place more of these to a point where the game is optimally self-sustaining to that point? Whereas like the placement of industrial or the placement of landfill starts becoming a more complex decision, because it's like, do I really want to make my citizens, you know, sick? Do I want to place this in the industrial location where it's already polluted anyway, so that becomes less of a problem? Do I place it next to the offices where nobody seems to care anyways, and that kind of stuff?
Are offices considered industry?
No.
They are, I guess, like they have the same one. Well, I don't know how to put it. It's like I've seen offices basically act as residential areas in terms of like people don't live there, but like they have the same negative effects happen to them as residential areas.
Okay.
Because like I remember like we put a landfill next to offices and stuff, and like
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean you
commercial.
can just put offices next to industry and they. I mean, like, if there's a demand for industry and you build offices, will that meet the demand for that?
oh yeah, I think it's closer to commercial. Maybe.
Oh, okay.
I think it's closer to commercial because I have not noticed it actually affecting industrial really.
And that's like a very weird like mechanic too. Like it doesn't seem like there's an actual point of it. Like I don't know if it's like gives you like significantly more money or something, but like
There's also a policy that can bring in tons of money. You can use that policy and like offices, it doubles the money of what the money offices bring in.
I guess I could see that.
Yeah. I mean, it's for the higher educated people.
What is the purpose of, in the entire system? What is the purpose of the offices anyway? Because if the industrial creates stuff for the commercial to sell, the residential is for those two to live in.
Jobs, I think industry ships stuff to offices too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure though.
I mean,
They probably ship pencils and staples.
I think people need other services too besides just buying goods, so I don't know. I like that there's a variety of different stores like that pop up. And, I mean,
Did it ever annoy anyone that you cannot decide what store gets erected?
There's mods for that, I think.
Yeah.
I think like I was saying with the whole transportation thing, I feel like this game is close to Cities XL in that it's about kind of designing a cool city and maybe less of a challenging game like some of the Sim Cities could be, and more about just creating like you can try to optimize it, like fill every square and use every piece of land you can, but sometimes I guess it's more fun or it's more designed to create. Even though you're saying it's punishing you for, it's not optimal. Like you're going to be wasting money if you build elevated roads and stuff. But I guess it's trying to be a little bit more lenient with being creative, even though it seems like it punishes you for it, because it's not punishing you too severely. But yeah, I mean, like you were mentioning, just being able to earn a lot of money, they probably could have made it more challenging if it wasn't as easy to earn money and stuff. Maybe there's a mod for that where
Yeah.
stuff degrades.
I was very impressed with like the very like versatility of like the amount of mods and stuff. Like I mean, there's mods for like, you know, nearly every conceivable like feature and function that you need, which kind of, I guess, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of it. Like, there's been a lot of talk recently, like about, you know, the purpose of mods and things. I mean, because I guess, like, you know, we just had, as of this date, like we just had E3 where Bethesda has tried their second attempt at making a paid mod system, which we'll see how that goes. But like that's kind of a, you know, it's kind of like this weird like dynamic between like, you know, the developer and the like modding community, because like, you know, there's a certain point where, you know, the amount of value that the community is giving, you know, kind of is doing the job of the developer. And then like, you know, I don't know, it's like, I don't think like City Skylines devs have been like that malicious toward, I mean, they definitely haven't been. I mean, but it's like kind of just like this weird thing of like, you know, I wonder if like they feel the devs feel need to like, you know, update the game as much when the community just like fills in the gaps where they feel it is.
I think they're adding. I think the updates have added features that popular mods have had. Which I know another game I play, Kerbal Space Program. There's a lot of mods for that, and sometimes they'll add features that modders have made, or they'll hire modders to work for them to implement those features.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good idea to have mods around. I don't think games should have to rely on them too much. Like, if a game, I think once a game stops development, like, it's good to have the mods around to keep the game viable. But definitely the games that don't allow mods can sometimes get in trouble where the developers stop working on it and things start breaking down.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the point I was trying to. That's like a better way of saying my point. Was like, you know, it's a kind of a weird gray area where they've, you know, the community has stepped up and like contributed a lot to this game, but then like, you know, it's still a game that's like technically inactive. I mean, they're still like, you know, updating it with content and features and stuff. So like, you know, it feels very weird to like, you know, have them counterintuitively, I guess, like add stuff. Another game, I mean, Bind of Isaac, the newest update to the Rebirth game, they basically said they weren't going to do any more DLCs, and their new content stream is they added like the mod system to Bind of Isaac. So then I think bi-monthly, they've said now, they'll just like incorporate like the most popular mods of that period into the game itself. Which, you know, it's like, you know, I think that's kind of like a nice end goal for a game. It's like, you know, just have the community, you know, just keep updating and then integrating it more and more. You know, I guess there's a certain point where then it's like, you know, when do the developers start giving back to the community when like you have enough community content in there, like in the game officially when someone like goes to buy it. I don't know. It's a very weird gray area still. I think there's not like, I don't think like there has been like an ideal solution, you know, for devs like officially recognizing modders in a way that doesn't feel like they're taking advantage of like free labor. I guess I don't know. That's like my, I guess, perspective on events. I think, I mean, you know, I like games that give the opportunity to like leave themselves open enough intentionally for modders to come in. Like I think City Skylines is like, you know, it's done a very fantastic job of like saying, you know, here's our tools and games, and they're very open, and you know, it works. Like, you know, mods work pretty well on, you know, the Steam database or workshop, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm curious to see, like, you know, where do the like the official devs go at that point?
Well, they've definitely released a lot of DLC. I mean, I just checked the store page and they have about $80 worth of DLC. So I mean, you know, I think DLC is kind of how the devs, those are like the mods that they're releasing, I guess you could say. Like they're still updating it, but I feel like gamers always kind of want everything for free. Like they just want the game to keep updating for free. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've certainly invested in some early access games that I've gotten hundreds of hours of playtime in and gotten all these updates. And that was fine because I knew it was early access, but some like a game like this that I don't think was in early access, it just came out. And people are still getting free updates. So I mean, that's always cool, but there's not, I guess the devs don't necessarily owe, once you buy a game, they don't owe you like free updates. And I mean, the same way the modders don't. You're not necessarily owed the mods to be up to date, and because people are doing that for free a lot of times. So like if a person makes a mod and it gets broken with the latest update and they never update it to work with a new update, you know, they're doing that in their own free time. So you don't really, I mean, people might get mad about it, but that's like somebody who's doing that for free. So if they decide not to update it anymore and it doesn't work, then you just can't use it. That's a tough break.
Yeah.
You don't always get what you want, you know, because it costs money, and it's for people. It will cost them their time, which is money, I guess, if they're not getting paid for it. I mean, sometimes you can donate to modders and stuff, but it's pretty rare. So, I mean, it's a risky thing to rely on mods at all, because they can stop working, or when the game gets updated, or they can cause other bad effects like game crashing. Or another thing I wanted to throw out there was I don't know if you realize this, but sometimes if you build in areas over trees, the trees are still there, and they're still taking up the resources, they're just invisible. So if you like bulldoze the buildings or the roads or whatever, the trees will pop back up. So some people suggest to make the game run better, you have to clear all the trees first, because it just sort of plops stuff, it gets rid of the tree from your sight, but it's still invisibly there on the terrain. And sometimes you'll see trees under the water. I try to delete from my map any underwater trees, but trees will just survive underwater, and they're kind of hard to get rid of.
That's interesting.
Were there any other like similar glitches people found in their playthrough, or like really random scenarios where you're like, that's kind of absurd? I mean, and the classic example from our live stream is that one building where it housed exactly one team, and
Yes.
and we were like, why? This is not a household. One kid is just inside this house all by themselves with no
It's
parents.
not that wild for a teenager to live alone.
There
He might have been emancipated.
were some things
Wait.
that people complain about, like for instance, railroad tracks in real life have to be very flat. I think this game allows you a little bit more leeway in making, and there's just some of the road. I mean, it is a game, I view it as sort of based around transportation systems, and the fact that you can make ridiculous ramps where the cars are like sometimes it lets you do crazy stuff with the roads that are not very realistic, and it looks funny. And the cars are just like flying through intersections that have no stop signs or anything, or like just the steepness of some of the ramps. I don't know if anyone's seen anything like that where it just lets you make something that would be impossible to actually drive on.
Those one-way roads definitely like had it to a point where like, it's 30 degrees in the opposite direction of the direction you're driving towards, and like they're supposed to turn around there, and the car's like, okay, that's normal, and just do that.
For me, it was the speed of the vehicles. I was actually watching a car drive down the road. He was not in a traffic or jam or anything. He was just driving down the road, and then the time it took for him to reach one end of the road to the other one, 4 days had passed. The speed of the characters and the clock in the in-game world clock did not match up. They should have either sped them up to account for the faster time or slowed them down. It just it didn't make sense for them to take like 4 or 5 days to drive down one road.
I had a scenario where I could not figure out how to place a dock such that people could travel on top of it, so I've been fumbling around with it for a while. And then suddenly now I have this one single ship that is marked confused and will constantly just drive up the harbor, then down, then up, then down. It will just continue to drive itself in a circle, but not in like a circle, but in like a, if you take a pencil and the eraser end remains at the same place, but the entire pencil just goes up and down this hill over and over again. So like I have 42 customers on that ship that are or 32 customers on that ship that don't know what to do and has no way of getting off that ship in any possible fashion. And they're just stuck there going up and down that hill for no reason.
I think you may have found the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
It's probably thinking that it should go in that direction, but then realizes it can't, so it goes back, and then, oh wait, I'm supposed to go in that direction, so it turns around and heads back again.
So yeah, there's a funny scenario like that. I think we've all had the fun of destroying a road while a bunch of cars are still on it.
Yeah.
And the cars, they don't care. They're just like, all right, we're just gonna go right back to wherever the closest road is.
Yeah. That's something I sort of liked about this game, is if I had a road with cars on it in the middle of a river and I destroyed that road, the cars won't fall into the river. They'll actually transfer to the closest road.
So you can't kill everyone.
Yeah.
And I can't drive off the end.
We love the fact that all the pedestrians play real world Frogger on the roads.
Yes.
Like they just don't care about the traffic.
Yeah.
It's like a real world with jaywalkers.
Yeah.
I was watching your transmissions. I thought it was pretty cool that the Pac-Man that goes for riding around.
I like that mod. The decisions for the I liked that Pac-Man was like the garbage truck. I thought it was weird that sedans were ghosts. I don't know what the comparison is, but I like the amount of mods. Like I was trying to find like stuff that was like really really weird, but like the weirdest stuff was like a giant Batman police station.
That was awesome. My brother would have loved that.
I mean, I think I did say this like during one of the streams. Is like this game really makes me want to play Planet Coaster, which is I don't know when I think it came out like October last year or something. But that's like it's kind of like a very indie. I don't know. It's like semi-indie roller coaster tycoon game, but it's like very moddable, and like I saw people do like be able to get like a lot more creative with it. But like that was like a one thing, I mean, kind of tangential. One thing I really really liked about this game is like how graphically nice it looked. Like I was really impressed, and I did read that was like a intention of the game's developers. Like they wanted to make a game that can like actively render 100 like a million people or something. But like a lot of the mods and everything like really looked like very high details, like really incredible and stuff. But
Yeah, I saw you playing around in first person. That looks pretty good.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like cool. Like all the people are like they're very polygonal, but like the actual buildings were like really well rendered, which is cool.
Anthony, do you have some wacky hijinks that you discovered on your city?
You ever listen to the radio stations?
There's radio
No.
stations.
Yep.
Oh yeah. There's a radio station that's like actual 60s music.
Yeah.
50s and 60s.
I thought there was gonna be more songs about cities, like
Burning down the house.
building it on rock and roll and whatnot.
Oh, we built the city.
Yeah.
But there wasn't, so it sounds like you were disappointed.
Modded in.
It's not
There was a station that played music from other games, like Crusader Kings 2. Just like Viking metal and stuff like that.
to check it out.
Did they work on Crusader Kings 2 as well?
Yeah, Paradox.
Paradox.
Yeah. So I mean, because they were published by Paradox, so they probably had licenses for that music.
Yeah.
Definitely had licenses for that music.
I think a game that maybe Anthony doesn't like, but I thought was kind of maybe up some other people's alley would be Tropico, which is a city builder where you get to do a lot more weird stuff. It's got a lot more pressures on you in terms of, it's not really about the look of the city or the traffic, it's more about all the gaming stuff that can happen. But it's still a city builder. It's sort of like more of a cross between Civilization maybe, but I think it's an interesting take on the city building thing that gives you more stuff outside of the, like you still place buildings and roads and all that, but it's it gets into a lot more of the stuff that this game kind of glosses over, like crazy political stuff. I don't know, I was just trying to think of other games that are in the same genre but do more weird stuff beyond the SimCity formula.
ActRaiser. ActRaiser was somewhat of a city builder, but you had side-scrolling action.
It was really, really simple though.
Yeah.
It's more like a Civ style though. I'm getting into like placing buildings and seeing people walking around type stuff. I mean, ActRaiser was a 16-bit, so it's kind of hard to do.
Now curious if there's a mod where you could put Donkey Kong style platforms.
New Donk
I
City.
was gonna say New Donk City is basically. I think that's like actually the level of New Donk City is just Donkey Kong.
Make sure Pauline is the mayor.
Yeah. I survived Donkey Kong. Vote for me.
Hey, I mean, legit like want to just force everyone to play. Just have the October, or I guess November at that point, because it's coming out in October. Just make everyone play Mario Odyssey, because it's like, I don't know. Very, very tangential. It's like the weirdest Mario I've ever seen. I love it so much.
Yeah. That's the idea.
Oh, jeez.
Do we want to do closing thoughts?
Sure.
Maybe I just did.
Do
Yes.
maybe. I guess who has like anything you want to like just say one last thing?
I have one last thing. I didn't know if it was relevant to anything else. The most annoying thing that if I could find a mod or if they could remove it from the core feature, when they remind you that you have unlocked a building or a feature or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Because I've had it where it was trying to tell me that I had new building or I could buy new land or something like that, but I'm in the middle of trying to fix another problem. So I wish I could disable that.
Yeah. I definitely had that as well.
Definitely
It's
agree
really
with that
annoying.
statement.
I guess my final thoughts are I liked it. I think I might try. It's definitely got my interest in city sim games again, so I might try a few others. But yeah.
Have a good night. Any final thoughts?
Nope.
No.
I think
Good night, everybody.
my Aaron. I think from like as earlier mentioned, like what the systems kind of told me was, you know, if you're going to build a city, first off, optimize your land usage, which is fine. That makes sense. That makes sense just from a practical perspective, even if we talk about, you know, suburbia and all that sort of stuff. So, like, that is a message I kind of agree with. But then it also goes into, like, how, you know, you want to make sure that you try to get in as many people into your city as you can, which I'm not entirely sure is a positive message. There's also the fact that you need to somehow balance out the educational system, the aforementioned thing that I kind of consider is rather troubling. You know, the whole you have to balance out the industrial, the commerce, and the normal resident,
Yeah.
which I mean, that one is, I guess, dependent on where you land on perspective-wise. Are you, like, I'm obviously the kind of person who lean more towards create more offices and create more commerce over than creating more industrial and that kind of stuff. So I feel like that one, like, inevitably a lot of people, I would argue probably the grand majority of the people who's going to be playing the game is probably not going to like the balance of how the game implies, like the game says it should be the right balance with those three elements, because, you know, we're all very likely going to have different opinions on what
Yes.
the proper balance is going to be. So in that sense, like, the fact that this game, it has like these algorithms written in such a way that kind of encourages certain behavior that may or may not be within the player's taste is not exactly, like, feels like an unintentional but nonetheless a consideration that developers may not have considered carefully.
It's also possible that they may not be trying to intentional or not deliver a specific political message through the game. It's
Mhm.
just how they designed it.
Right.
You don't have similar to how certain games, other people will think, oh, that promotes murder, or that promotes so and so and so on. And people are like, no, it's just a game. It's not trying to promote or give any messages. It's
Mhm.
There's always politics in games.
Well, I
It
mean,
can't be avoided. Like, the people, it's just in there. It's there.
to be clear, I'm not particularly angry at the developers.
Yeah.
This is me just stating an opinion, and I guess for me it's kind of like a statement of algorithms cannot be biased statement, which is, I believe, a patently false statement, because who wrote that algorithm? A human being, and every bias that comes from that human being is going to be implied in that. In the same scenario, like there are just some things in the game that I feel I don't particularly blame the developers for putting it in there per se, like certain balancing aspects or messages that I kind of infer from it. But at the same time, like, I question if it can be taken the wrong way.
yeah, that makes sense.
Because I certainly, for one, was a little disturbed. Not that I think, like I said, the developer intended it to mean that way.
I think I'm familiar with a lot of simulation and city building games, and to me this game is a good sort of introduction for in terms of a modern gaming. Probably more on the casual end of things, and it's not too expensive. It has a lot of flexibility with mods and stuff, so it's a good place to start off. I've played other ones too, so I mean, I can't say that this one has like replaced all the things that other ones can do, but it's definitely a game that, you know, I like to play a little bit. I just have so many games that, you know, spending a lot of hours. I've spent over 10 hours in this game, but you know, it's probably not really intense hours. It's more, you know, I move on to other games when I'm looking for something different. So who knows? I know Anthony mentioned multiplayer. Somebody did, so maybe they'll add multiplayer stuff.
That'd be cool.
How was your vanilla experience, Anthony?
It's fine.
Very vanilla.
Yes.
I think we skipped over Robert.
You did. I actually played the deluxe version, which I believe only just adds 5 landmarks. So essentially, I had the vanilla experience as well, but I enjoyed it. I mean, it's been a long time since I've played a city building type of sim game before, and it, you know, kind of brought me back a little bit. And I like the graphics, and you know, I did feel like it could have used more challenge and a little more objectives and goals, and made me feel like I was actually aiming for something rather than just increasing my population as high as possible. But overall, I enjoyed it.
And with that, I guess we do our thing where we just meander out of the podcast.
We fade out of the podcast, yeah.
We could.
We'll just talk about Mario Odyssey forever again. I'm really excited for it.
It looks good.
I genuinely love. I don't know. That game looks so good. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I've heard everyone on the show for it.
Hello everyone, Taro here. I'll be the next host for the Tech Valley Game Space Game Club. I've selected 4 short games for the next podcast, and they are, in no particular order, Ebe, Hello Hello, Yumeniki, and The Witch's House. These are all horror games created in RPG Maker, all free, and have their own unique take on how to spook the player as well as how they tell their stories. In Ebe, you play as a titular 9-year-old girl who finds herself stuck inside a haunted art gallery, where the creepy paintings comes to life. And in Hello Hello, you play as Kazuki, who visits a one-room apartment every day to uncover its poltergeist's identity. In Yumeniki, you play as a young girl named Marotsuki, who either is unwilling to or unable to walk out of her own apartment. The only thing to liven up her depressing life is to go to sleep and explore her vivid and often symbolic dreams. And in The Witch's House, you play as a 13-year-old girl named Viola, who is trapped inside a forest and must explore the titular haunted house that constantly shapeshifts to find a solution to removing the forest's blockade. I hope you all have fun in the next spooky podcast.